conference room inside the Pentagon's Joint Operations Center hummed with low voices, shifting chairs, and the rustle of uniforms. Satellite maps filled the projection wall. Flickering with red zones and callouts, the room was full pilots, analysts, intelligence officers, and special ops commanders. But none of them noticed Layla Monroe when she entered. She wasn't announced. She wasn't introduced. She was just a woman in a Navy uniform, quietly holding a tray with 3 coffees and a leather-bound folder tucked under one arm. No one looked twice. People in the military learned to tune out background roles. And that's exactly what she played for now. She moved along the edge of the room, stepping over power cords and squeezing between chairs. Her eyes scanned the seating layout casually, but her mind tracked every face, every insignia, and every rank. She wasn't there for coffee. That was just the cover. Layla set the tray down near the command table and stepped back, hands behind her back. She watched as a colonel with silver clusters reached for one of the cups, grunted in appreciation, and continued discussing exfil protocols over Syrian airspace. Another officer clicked through a new drone surveillance window, pointing at infrared motion trails near a mountainous region labeled Op Red Hand Ridge. "Target has moved again," one of the intelligence leads said. "We believe he's inside the northern cave systems, flanked by a dozen armed guards and supported by Russian satellite security nodes." They were speaking about someone dangerous, someone slippery, someone they still hadn't confirmed by name. Layla turned, intending to leave as planned, but a pilot seated closest to the door glanced up just a flicker of movement as his eyes caught something unusual. His attention snapped fully to her sleeve. "What the hell is that?" he asked. The room didn't go silent right away. The first few nearby looked up, confused. The pilot stood, pointing directly at Layla's right shoulder. "That patch. Where did you get it?" Everyone now turned. Layla's body tensed for a half second. She slowly looked down at the matte black insignia stitched subtly into her sleeve, a barely visible falcon, its wings raised, talons extended downward over a spear. There was no color, no letters, no unique name, just shadow thread embroidery. She had expected someone might notice. She hadn't expected it this soon. "What patch?" one colonel asked, standing. "Is that some kind of squadron identifier?" The pilot took 2 steps closer. "That's not Air Force, Navy, or Marine Corps. I've seen that once, in a room I wasn't supposed to be in." Layla didn't flinch. Her voice was steady, even calm. "Sir," she said, looking to the 3-star general at the head of the table, requesting permission to address the room under clearance override protocol. The general narrowed his eyes. He was an old warhorse, gray hair, face like a storm-worn stone. He stared at her for a long moment, then gave a single nod. "Granted." Layla stepped forward and set the leather folder on the table. She flipped it open, revealing a laminated black access card with a holographic triangle and code strip. "Lieutenant Commander Layla Monroe, Intelligence Support Activity, Tier 1 Detachment, Fort Belvoir." A wave of realization swept across the room like a silent explosion. The ESA was a regular intel. It wasn't even deep cover CIA. This was blacker than black operations, so classified most generals had never seen the full roster. Some called them the activity, others the American ghosts. They existed where accountability disappeared and deniability began. The general leaned back in his chair. "You're not here for coffee." "No, sir," Layla replied. "Then what are you here for?" She pulled a data chip from her jacket pocket and placed it in the center of the table. A nearby tech officer hesitated, then plugged it into the system. The projection wall shifted from satellite maps to a dossier screen titled Kingmaker. Active threat code red, unconfirmed target location, Syria. Ridge system C7. The room darkened slightly as images and encrypted text scrolled across the screen. Facial scans, thermal overlays, intercepted chatter. Layla spoke clearly, her tone commanding but never loud. "You're looking at the wrong part of the ridge. He's not moving randomly. He's embedded. We've tracked his signal for 3 months, cross-referenced through 3 ghost network layers and facial reconstructions. This is your man." She pointed at the grainy photo of a bearded figure leaving the cave entrance under IR capture. "Alias, Kingmaker. Former asset handler. Betrayed to NATO operations and sold biometric ID keys to hostile states. He is planning to sell an active duty access profile within the week. If he succeeds, a Tier 1 operator's identity will be blown. Possibly more than one. Lives will be lost. The pilot, who had first noticed the patch, leaned forward. "What do you need from us?" Layla's eyes scanned the team, evaluating their readiness. She didn't waste time. "I need insertion support. Halo-capable team. Full blackout. Exfiltration optional. This is not a capture mission. The primary goal is to secure one object. From Kingmaker's personal equipment, a biometric override chip. He doesn't survive the night." For several seconds, no one moved. Then the general exhaled sharply through his nose. Someone shut the doors, he said. An aide turned the lock. The mission, as they knew it, had just changed. The doors sealed with a dull metallic click. Conversation dropped to a hush. Even among the nation's top strategists and field officers, the presence of someone from the East carried weight. These weren't desk-bound analysts. They were the people who knew how thin the line between intelligence and catastrophe really was. The general gave a nod. "Continue, Commander." Layla clicked to the next slide. A 3D terrain map flickered onto the screen, highlighting a network of ridges, valleys, and hollowed-out rock formations. "Kingmaker is stationed here. Cave. System C7. He's protected by former foreign special forces. Estimated headcount, 12. Not including drone and signal interference operators. Every approach route is trapped. Mines. Acoustic sensors. IR tripwires. They're expecting satellites, not boots." A Marine colonel squinted at the layout. "No surface entry to exposed," Layla said. "He's built the defense for aerial assault, but his tech security is vulnerable. His system hasn't been updated since he bought it. He thinks staying offline makes him invisible. That's his weakness. We go in silent, surgically retrieve the biometric override chip and burn everything else." "What's the window?" someone asked. Layla didn't blink. 72 hours. After that, his client list will scatter. So will the chip. The Navy pilot, call sign Dagger, leaned over his seat. "And who exactly are we exfiltrating with? You said extraction optional." "We're not extracting Kingmaker," Layla said. "We're extracting the chip. If he lives, it's because the mission failed. The chip contains embedded biometric signatures, 3 confirmed Tier 1 operators, and possibly 1 foreign intelligence mole. If that data leaks, the targets aren't just burned, they're hunted." There was a pause. Even hardened warfighters weren't used to blunt finality like that. "Why now?" the general asked, voice gravelly. "Because this morning, he activated a transfer key. We intercepted the signal through a backdoor relay. He's prepping the sale. If he hands that chip off, it's out of our reach forever." Layla tapped the folder again, flipping to a new schematic. The briefing screen showed a composite image of a digital lockbox. "This is what we're after." Palm scan. Voice locked. Eyes only access. "The chip is sealed inside this case, which remains on his person at all times. I have the fail-safe device that can unlock it if retrieved intact." Dagger raised an eyebrow. "You?" Layla pulled a MacRay wristband from her pocket and slapped it against the table. "Custom printed. My retina. My voice. My handprint. It's tied to my biometrics. That's why I lead." The silence turned heavy. "You're not just an intel officer," the Marine colonel muttered. "No, sir," she replied. "I'm a designated ghost agent with authorization under Directive 12. I've operated in 7 black-level extractions across 5 countries. Kingmaker was once one of ours. He flipped 2 years ago, and he knows how we move. That's why he's still alive." A special tactics major tapped the screen. "You trained under him." Layla's jaw set for half a second. "Briefly, I saw enough." The general steepled his hands. "You mentioned Halo. You jumped before?" Layla nodded. 36 jumps. High altitude, night entry. I'll be carrying the unlocker, suppressor rifle, encrypted relay, and a pulse jammer. My team must include aerial exfil expertise and jungle breach readiness. We'll land 1 kilometer out, hike the ridge in complete silence, and go underground. And you trust the satellite delay from Intel. Last op near Aleppo got lit up because the terrain changed. One of the younger officers chimed in. "I don't trust satellites," Layla said plainly. "That's why I reconned it myself." The room stiffened. Dagger looked up from his notes. "You were in Syria?" Layla looked him straight in the eye. 2 weeks ago, disguised as a Russian logistics contractor. I followed one of Kingmaker's runners into the Ridge network and dropped the GPS markers. Before I got out, the data was sanitized through it. I ghost bouncer routed back to Fort Belvoir. Jesus, someone whispered. The general leaned forward. So you want this room to approve an off-the-books direct action operation in foreign territory, led by a Tier 1 ESA operative using biometric clock tech with no formal extraction plan. And you expect us to sign off today? Layla didn't hesitate. No, sir, I expect you to authorize what has already been approved by Langley. I'm not here for permission. I'm here to integrate your team before I move. That landed like a hammer. Langley sent you? Dagger asked. I sent myself, Layla corrected, but Langley knows I'm here. NSA is monitoring the cave's signal leakage in real time. The president's assistant chief of staff is briefed, and the only reason it hasn't gone to the Oval Office is because it's not necessary yet. The room buzzed again. The general waved his hand, silencing it. You're taking Dagger. He's the best in the air. You'll have for SEALs. You'll jump tonight. Layla nodded. Understood. The general looked to his aide, pulled the original briefing plan. This operation's been replaced. Everything else is burned. The pilot grabbed his flight helmet and stood. What should I call you up there? Commander. Layla met his eyes. Ghost leader, but just Monroe will do. As she turned to leave, several of the officers sat in stunned silence. A few exchanged looks of admiration. Others just stared at the now blank screen. The woman who entered to serve coffee had just rewritten a mission and assumed command of a Black Tier assault force. Without shouting, without boasting, she had simply walked in and changed everything. 2 hours later, inside hangar for B of a restricted U.S. airbase, Layla Monroe stood under the dull red lights, fully suited in matte black halo gear. The wind outside screamed across the tarmac, but inside, it was quiet, purposefully so. Gear, checks, silent nods, a final round of weapons calibrations. No one spoke unless it mattered. The SEAL team assigned to her called themselves Echo 9. No names, just call signs Rook, Hammer, Shade, and Vex, professionals, the kind who'd been in enough firefights to stop caring about ego. They moved around her quickly, but respectfully. Layla didn't need to prove herself. She already had. Dagger stepped through the hangar doors in full flight gear, helmet under one arm. He paused when he saw her loading her suppressor. I've flown classified all over the world, he said, but I've never escorted someone carrying their own retinal unlock device. She didn't stop what she was doing. Then this. Is your first time flying with Ghost Division? He smirked. You always so casual before a drop? Only when I've already walked the terrain. His expression changed. He understood now she wasn't bluffing. Most people needed maps and satellite prints. Layla needed only a memory. She didn't guess her route. She remembered footsteps. In the corner of the hangar, a tech officer rolled over a hard case with a glowing blue biometric seal. Layla opened it, revealing the heart of the mission, a carbon steel cube, about the size of a grenade. It looked simple. Inside was the biometric override chip that Kingmaker carried. Layla would have to swap it out during the breach and insert it into the failsafe device. One shot, no retries. The seal named Hammer peered into the case. That little thing gets plugged into a mainframe and, what? Turns on every kill switch in the U.S. arsenal. Not exactly, Layla said, but if it ends up in the wrong hands, it could unlock every classified personnel file from SOCOM to the CIA. Operators overseas would be exposed, dead within weeks, or turned. Rook nodded. So we go loud, grab it, torch the rest. No, Layla said, closing the case. We go in silent. You won't fire unless I say so. Kingmaker knows what a SEAL squad sounds like. He won't expect me. He trained me to be invisible. There was a pause. Shade adjusted his sling. He trained you. Layla turned her eyes toward the C-130 waiting just outside, briefly, until he went dark. The team said nothing after that. At 01:00 hours, the ramp dropped and the cold blast of air flooded the aircraft. They were 35,000 feet over hostile terrain. Oxygen masks on. Final comms check. Dagger's voice came over the internal channel. Drop zone in 90 seconds. Ridge line should be clear. If it isn't, well, improvise. Layla checked her wrist. Her biometric band blinked green, sensed to her vitals. The retinal lock device sat in her chest rig, sealed. Her custom MP7 sat tight against her back. 2 knives, one in her boot, one under her vest. She touched each weapon lightly before giving a single nod. The jumpmaster opened the side door. Wind howled through the bay, but Layla's mind was already beyond it. She wasn't afraid. The sensation of falling, the plunge into blackness, was the beginning of clarity. Dagger's voice cracked through once more. "Ghost Leader, you're up." Without hesitation, she stepped into the open air and vanished. The drop was clean. The wind ripped past her, but her form stayed tight. Layla guided her trajectory with her gloved fingers, counting seconds with each breath. 30, 20, 10. At the right altitude, she popped her chute. The canopy bloomed above her like a whisper. Below, the Syrian ridge crept closer, dark, jagged, and deathly quiet. She landed silently, rolled into the descent, and rose with smooth precision. One by one, the seals touched down around her like shadows. No one spoke, only hand signals. Layla led the way. The terrain was rough, full of loose rock and sand that crunched beneath careless boots. But her movements were ghost-like. They covered distance quickly, using every contour for concealment. The night vision overlay on her lenses painted the ground in faint green, revealing the path she'd walked once before. Ahead, a jagged line of rock opened into the cave mouth. Two guards sat near the entrance, smoking under a low lead bowl. Layla crouched, gave a sharp signal. The team split. Vex circled left, Hammer right. One suppressed shot, then another. Two bodies dropped. Quiet as whispers, Layla moved first, dragging the corpses into the shadows. The cave swallowed them in darkness. Inside, motion sensors blinked on steel tripods. Acoustic monitors ticked. In rhythm with wind and heat, Layla activated her pulse jammer. The devices sputtered. The team slipped deeper into the tunnel. Every step was calculated, every breath controlled. Suddenly, Layla froze. Her hand shot up. Infrared laser grid, inches from her face. She pulled a mirror, angled it upward, traced the beam to a corner mounted sensor. With calm hands, she sprayed a mist of infrared reflective gas, temporarily blinding the reader. The team passed through in single file. Up ahead, voices echoed soft, muffled, but growing louder. Layla raised her weapon, checked her. Biometric sync once more. The device blinked, still green, still alive. They were close. Too close to fail now. Layla raised her hand again, this time with 3 fingers extended. The signal meant halt, eyes up. The seals froze, weapons ready, ahead of them. Flickering lights glowed at the far end of the corridor. A curved opening fed into a wider chamber. According to her recon, that was the secondary command central room where Kingmaker filtered incoming intel, processed drone feeds, and encrypted communications before routing them through underground satellite jammers. She turned to Shade and pointed to the left. He peeled off immediately, sticking to the wall and keeping low. Hammer and Rook mirrored her motion, fanning right. Layla moved center, pushing forward alone. Her eyes trained on a narrow device mounted near the entrance. Another motion-triggered alarm. She knelt and pulled a small glass capsule from her pouch, cracked it, and released a burst of aerosolized carbon dust. The sensor's internal reader instantly scrambled. A soft click confirmed. It deactivated. The air in the tunnel had changed. Warmer now. The scent of sweat and recycled oxygen hovered in the stillness. Layla switched to thermal. 3 bodies inside, stationary, not patrolling. Operators monitoring screens. She crept forward just to the edge of the chamber. Inside, a bank of monitors illuminated the cave's natural stone walls in dim blue and red hues. 2 men were seated at the consoles, one standing behind with a rifle slung across his chest. They wore mismatched tactical gear, Eastern European origin. Black market modified. Layla took a slow breath, then she moved. She slid through the threshold like liquid shadow, raising her suppressed MP7 and firing twice. The 2 seated men dropped instantly, slumping over the consoles. The standing guard whirled. Weapon halfway raised, but Hammer was already behind him. A blade flashed. The man dropped without a sound. Layla moved to the console. Red code ran across the screen. A transmission countdown. She yanked the primary plug, killing the power. Then she slipped the USB data interceptor into the secondary port, copying system logs. She whispered, "Status," Rook asked from the hall. "Clear. 1 minute. Then we move." The data bar blinked -20-8%. Layla scanned the room for anything useful. One wall held a map with small red flags pinned into regions across Syria and northern Iraq. Target zones. Likely extraction or smuggling routes. Beside it hung a laminated photo of a man in a black mask shaking hands with someone whose face was blurred. Layla's eyes narrowed. That was Kingmaker's buyer. 45%. Another 30 seconds ticked by in silence. The files loaded completely. She pulled the USB, destroyed the port with a quick jab of her knife, and turned toward the corridor. A faint vibration passed through the ground. Then another. The cave groaned. Rook's voice came in, low and urgent. Footsteps, heavy, multiple, coming from the lower shaft. Layla raised her fist. Move. The team advanced toward the heart of the ridge system, navigating downward through tighter corridors. The deeper they went, the more advanced the defenses became. Cameras mounted in false rock faces, pressure plates under uneven stone, sensors with rotating IR beams. But Layla had memorized every hazard. She'd walked this place once before, and Kingmaker hadn't changed a thing. They reached the final tunnel, beyond it Kingmaker's chamber. A converted weapons vault turned data sanctuary. Inside was the biometric lock case. Inside that case, the chip. Layla brought the team to a stop and placed her hand against the wall. Cool air pulsed from the seams. An active fix system. He was inside. She turned, gave the hand signal. Go. The seals charged in. Smoke flashed. A grenade went off, throwing a shockwave of sound, but no shrapnel, just confusion. Inside, Kingmaker stood calmly, hands in the air. Round him, 3 armed guards leveled weapons, but 2 were immediately cut down. The third fired once before. Shade silenced him. Layla stepped through the haze, weapon raised. Kingmaker looked older than she remembered, grayer, heavier, but his eyes were sharp, calculating. Well, he said, they sent you. I thought they would. Layla kept her rifle trained on his chest. Get down, face to the wall. He didn't move. You know this is bigger than you. That chip will buy peace for people the world forgot. No, she said. That chip will buy assassinations. You're selling identities. You think that's peace. It's leverage. It's betrayal. He smirked, so dramatic. I train you better than that. She moved forward and slammed him to the wall. The seals secured the room. Rook swept for secondary targets, while Vex retrieved the biometric case from Kingmaker's vest. Layla yanked it from his chest and inserted her biometric band. The device beeped, unlocked. Inside thin as a dog tag was the chip, encoded with the DNA, heartbeat signature. An iris scanner for black level operatives. Secure, she called. Just then, a blast shook the cave. They're onto us, Hammer said. Movement at the ridge. Time to move, Layla said. She turned back to Kingmaker. You're done. He didn't reply. As the seals led him out, Layla tucked the chip case into her chest rig. Another blast echoed behind them. Dust rained from the ceiling. Extraction was still 2 ridges away, and the enemy wasn't done yet. The cave trembled again, this time with a deeper, rolling boom. Small stones fell from the ceiling, and dust clouds drifted through the corridor. As Layla and the SEAL team moved fast, guiding Kingmaker through the tunnel, Hammer took point. Rook and Shade flanked the prisoner. Layla brought up the rear, clutching the biometric chip in her chest rig like her life depended on it. It did. We've got movement, came Dagger's voice through comms, the heat signatures on ridge echoing. Your route. Multiple tangos approaching from the south. Layla responded immediately. Dagger, hold at current coordinates. Do not descend until I confirm the ridge is clear. If they spot the bird, we're dead. Copy that. Ghost leader. I'll keep her circling. The team emerged from the tunnel's mouth into open terrain. The cold night air hit them instantly. The sky was darker than ink, but movement was everywhere, figures darting across higher rock faces. Shifting shadows, the faint glint of weapon barrels under moonlight. We're exposed. Rook muttered. Layla pointed toward a narrow rock. Shoot. Through there. Cut east. Ridge wall will cover our movement. They pushed forward, but the second they entered the chute, gunfire erupted from above. Sparks flew off the rocks. Hammer dove, returning fire in sharp, precise bursts. 2 shooters. Shade shouted. Upper left slope. Layla scanned and raised her MP7. 1 target. Clean shot. She fired twice, throat and head. The figure dropped limp. The second shooter ducked behind cover, suppressing. Rook yelled. The SEALs poured fire into the ridge until the second attacker disappeared, possibly dead or retreating. Either way, they had seconds to move. Layla gave the signal and the team surged forward. They moved fast, the terrain working both for and against them. Loose rock made every step uncertain, but the natural shadows concealed their silhouettes from distant eyes. Kingmaker stumbled and fell. Shade yanked him to his feet by the collar. I didn't think they'd ever catch me. Kingmaker muttered. Layla leaned in. No one caught you. I hunted you. His grin faded. Suddenly, another voice crackled in her comms. Dagger again. Hostiles approaching your extraction point. You've got maybe 6 minutes before it's a kill zone. Layla responded, breath steady despite the sprint. Copy. Mark new LZ. Send coordinates. A ping hit her visor HUD. She checked the map. Rerouting. 40 meters south, elevated platform. Past the cliff edge. That's barely wide enough for the skid. Dagger warned. You're flying it. She replied. They made the turn and reached the final incline, jagged shale and broken rock. Kingmaker slipped again. We leave him? Vex asked. Layla shook her head. We need him alive until we're airborne. Then we decide. Climbing was brutal. One wrong step and they'd tumble back down into enemy fire. Above them, rotors thundered. The chopper hovered just over the ridge, barely balanced on the narrow ledge. Dagger fought the controls, keeping the tail steady against wind gusts. LZ's hot, he shouted. As if on cue, bullets sprayed the slope. One round tore past Layla's leg. Another hit Hammer in the vest, knocking him sideways. I'm hit. Hammer shouted, gritting his teeth. Move, Layla yelled. She reached back, grabbed Hammer's gear strap, and half-dragged him up. The incline. Shade covered them. Returning fire was short, brutal bursts. Vex hauled Kingmaker toward the bird, while Rook laid down, suppressing fire behind. Layla shoved Hammer toward the chopper. Vex pulled him inside, then everything went sideways. A grenade clinked against the rocks behind her. Down, she shouted. It exploded, sending shockwaves and dirt flying. She hit the ground hard, ears ringing. When she opened her eyes, everything was blurred. Blood on her gloves. She couldn't tell if it was hers. Hands grabbed her Rook. He pulled her to her feet. Come on, Ghost Leader. You're not dying out here. They ran the last few feet together. She leapt into the chopper just as Dagger lifted it off. Rook fired the last shots from the ramp before slamming the door shut. The ridge vanished beneath. Then, inside, the noise was deafening. The chopper bucked as it climbed, dodging small arms fire. Hammer was bleeding from his side, but conscious. Vex tended to him with field gauze. Shade watched the ridge through a rear port, eyes locked on movement below. Layla sat opposite Kingmaker, her chest rising and falling, face smeared with dirt and ash. Her hands trembled, but not from fear, from restraint. Kingmaker watched her with strange amusement. You did all this for that little chip, he said. What do you think it's going to change? Layla reached into her rig, pulled the biometric device, and held it in front of him. This chip, she said quietly, has the names of people who disappear into the dark every day to stop men like you. You don't get to sell them. Not now. Not ever. Kingmaker leaned back and laughed bitterly. Then I guess you win. No. She said, you lose. Everyone else gets to keep going. Dagger's voice came through again, calmer this time. Passing friendly airspace. We're clear. Layla exhaled, long and slow. The tension in her body didn't leave, but she allowed herself one breath of peace. Rook handed her a small earpiece. Langley wants your voice confirmation. She took it, wiped her face, and said, Ghost Leader. Package secured. Team. Alive. Mission complete. On the other end, a voice replied, understood. Return to base. And Monroe, good work. She nodded once, then stared out the window at the night sky as it slowly lightened. With the first hints of dawn, the mission was over, but the war she lived in never ended. 2 days after the extraction, Langley was quiet. Too quiet for Layla Monroe. She stood in observation room 3, watching through one-way glass as Kingmaker sat cuffed at the steel table, staring at the ceiling like he owned the place. He was clean-shaven, now, issued gray interrogation scrubs, but the arrogance still clung to him like oil. Langley's best interrogators had already tried. 2 sessions. 6 hours. No results. Let me in. Layla said. The analyst next to her blinked. Ma'am. Director Easton said. I outrank Easton when it comes to field acquisitions. And Kingmaker is mine. With hesitation, the analyst unlocked the door. Layla entered calmly. Kingmaker didn't move. She dropped a small pouch on the table between them, then pulled out the biometric chip and placed it down slowly. Remember this. He smiled without showing teeth. I remember a lot. You'll have to be more specific. Cut the act, she said. I don't need your confession. I just need the names. He leaned forward slightly, eyes narrow, And why would I give them to you? Layla sat across from him, silent for several seconds. Then she reached into the pouch again and slid a single photo across the table. It was a woman in uniform, navy, smiling, young, a baby in her arms, Lieutenant Camilla Hart, killed in Bahrain during an ambush arranged by your intel cell. She has 6 months left on deployment. She slid another photo. Captain Rafiq Usman, Delta Force, taken hostage after your buyers learned his exfil route. Tortured, executed. Then a third, and this petty officer Micah Keene, my brother. You sold the op that got him blown up in Aleppo. Kingmakers. Eyes lingered on the last photo. Layla's voice was razor sharp. This is a negotiation. You don't leave this building. But the names you give me, maybe they don't vanish in some prison where no one even bothers to ask, where your body? When? He leaned back slowly. You want a list? I want everything. He laughed once, cold and cruel. The list is broken into fragments. I never carried the whole thing. Each buyer had a portion. Redundancy, safety. Layla expected that. So where's your part? He raised one eyebrow. That's the interesting part. Before she could respond, a knock hit the door. The analyst from before stepped in. Ghost leader. Director Easton wants you upstairs. Now, Layla stood, eyes still on Kingmaker. We're not done. He smiled again. I'll be right. Here. She followed the analyst up 3 levels to Langley's top secure briefing suite. Inside, Director Easton, General Rames, and 2 members of the NSA were already seated. Monroe. Easton began. You've done well, but there's been a development. Layla folded her arms. What kind? General Rames answered. We just got a ping from a remote substation in Alaska. Satellite relay node tried to process a handshake from a dormant terminal. Whose terminal? She asked. Easton slid a tablet across the table. Yours? Layla froze. My terminal was physically destroyed 3 years ago. After Yemen. Apparently not. The ghost signal matched your mission log signature and requested data tied to Operation Ember Dagger, the same op that's connected to the Kingmaker. Chip. Layla narrowed her eyes. That op was black tier. Only for people had that clearance. And now someone's using your credentials, Rames said. That makes this personal. She leaned forward. Give me a team. 1 bird. I'll go. Easton shook his head. Negative. It's classified as an internal breach. We'll let the cyber division trace it. Layla's voice was hard. By the time they trace it, the data could be in Russian hands, or worse. Easton stood. This is not your call. Layla stared him down. It became my call when that chip got pulled out of a warlord's spine with my gloves on. Silence hung thick in the room. Rames finally said, give her 48 hours. If she finds something, we clean it. If not, we shut it down. Easton looked like he'd swallowed acid, but he nodded. Fine. 48. Layla turned. To leave. Oh, and Ghost Leader, Easton added, if this comes back dirty, there will be no extraction. You understand me? She didn't even turn. Wouldn't expect one. Back downstairs, she didn't return to Kingmaker. She went to the sublevel vault. Her gear was there still sealed in a biometric locker. She placed her hand on the panel. It scanned her fingers, her retinas, and finally her voice. Ghost Leader, Clearance Alpha. The locker hissed open, her combat rig. Suppressed sidearm. Satellite tracker. Burner tablet. Custom stealth knife with the name etched in the hilt keen. She suited up in silence. Outside, a black tilt rotor waited, engines cold but ready. The crew members and 1 co-pilot waited. Layla stepped up the ramp. The co-pilot turned. Dagger. Still chewing the same piece of gum from yesterday. Probably. You gonna tell me where we're going? He asked. She opened her tablet and dropped a map pin. Fort Chasm, Northern Alaska, off-grid substation. My ghost lives there now. Dagger raised his eyebrows but didn't ask questions. The engines roared to life. As the aircraft lifted, Layla stared down at the lights of Langley shrinking beneath her. Kingmaker had given her just enough to bait her forward. Now she'd find the others who had the rest. This wasn't a mission anymore. It was a reckoning. The tilt rotor's descent into northern Alaska was brutal. Jagged wind and a sky-colored steel. Below them sprawled the tundra white, endless, unforgiving. There was no runway, no lights, no beacon, just a slab of broken concrete surrounded by frost-covered pine, a forgotten substation built decades ago during the Cold War. Fort Chasm. Layla dropped from the ramp as soon as the wheels kissed ground. Her boots crunched the snow. The air bit her lungs like needles. Dagger followed with 2 trackers and a portable comms case. This place shouldn't exist. He muttered. It barely does. Layla replied. The building was a 1-story bunker, half buried under a frozen hill. A metal hatch led underground, barely visible beneath frost. Layla wiped the seal clean and scanned it. Surprisingly, the scanner lit green. Access granted. The machine chirped. Dagger looked at her. Why would your code still work? Layla drew her sidearm. Because whoever's inside wanted it to. The hatch opened with a heavy hiss. Warm air rose, filtered, stale, but breathable. Lights flickered inside. Backup power. They descended a steel ladder into a narrow hallway. Its walls covered in peeling paint and old military labels. The deeper they went, the more modern the tech became. Tactical servers, encrypted routers, black box signal relays. At the heart of the compound, a terminal glowed, and sitting behind it was a man. Gray hair, tactical vest, eyes like broken glass. Layla didn't lower her weapon. You're supposed to be dead, she said. He turned. So are you, Ghost Leader. Mason Wren, former NSA cyber spy turned triple agent, vanished 5 years ago. Declared KIA during a failed exfiltration in Kabul. Layla had seen his body herself, or so she thought. Dagger swore softly. You've got to be kidding. Wren stood slowly, hands empty. I figured you'd come, only a matter of time once Kingmaker got loud. Layla stepped forward, gun steady. You stole my credentials. You accessed Ember Dagger. That file was sealed in a dead vault. I didn't steal them. You gave them to me. No, she said. I buried the identity the day we buried Micah. Wren walked past the terminal toward a sealed cabinet. He typed a passcode and pulled out a hardened drive, tossing it onto the table. Everything I've pulled. Names. Fragments of the ledger. The real buyers. Layla didn't touch it. Why? Because we're both ghosts, he said. And the people who built us are still out there. Dagger moved beside her. We can take this back to Langley. Have them trace the rest. Wren shook his head. If you do that, the list disappears again. You think Kingmaker was the source? He was a middleman. The real cell is there inside the Five Eyes network. Senior. Deep clearance. They created Ember Dagger, and they've killed to keep it buried. Layla narrowed her eyes. Then why expose it now? Because they're preparing another sale. He said, not just identities. Protocols, launch codes, hypersonic, schematics, the kind of data that sparks world wars. He pointed to the drive. They're using an old diplomatic route-coded couriers, encryption inside embassy shipments. In 72 hours, it'll all be across the Atlantic. After that, it's gone. Layla stared at the screen. The data logs confirmed it. Packet transfers, routes, encryption bursts matching NATO channels. You want my help stopping it, she said flatly. I want your help exposing them, Wren replied. This time we don't vanish the truth. We detonate it. The silence hung heavy. Then Dagger's comms flared sharp static, followed by 2 words. Breach detected. The lights flickered. Layla snapped around, gun raised. We're not alone. The motion sensors lit up across the monitor. 3 red blips, then 5, then 10, all moving underground, fast. Someone tripped the satellite ping, Wren said, already typing. It flagged our location. They must have been tracking for weeks. Layla's voice was cold. Who's coming? Wren didn't look up. Not US, not Russian. Ghosts like us. Hired guns. Layla grabbed the drive and shoved it into her vest. Shut the system. Purge everything else. Dagger was already at the exit. We need to move. They'll have snipers in place already. They climbed the hatch ladder just as the first shots rang out. The tiltrotor sight exploded in flame. Dagger ducked. Evacs gone. Layla scanned the tree. Line. Figures in tactical gear closed in and marked. Silent. Coordinated. Back underground, she ordered. Choke them in the tunnels. They descended again. Sealing the hatch behind them, Wren moved fast, locking internal blast doors. There's a rear shaft manual exit. Leads half a mile east under the snow. Layla pulled a spare mag from her rig. We hold the center. You and Dagger get to the exit. I'll follow once I plant thermals. Dagger shook his head. Not leaving you. You are. That data has to survive. The blast doors shook violently. The attackers were breaching. Layla looked at Wren. We finish this. Then we burn it. Wren nodded once. No more shadows. As she armed the thermals, Layla stared at the drive pressed against her chest. It weighed less than a pound but carried names that could burn down nations. She holstered her sidearm and raised her rifle. Outside the door, the ghost came closer. Inside, Layla Monroe waited not as a courier, not as a code name, but as a reckoning. The blast door screamed with pressure, then cracked open like a splitting rib. Smoke surged through the seams. Muffled orders echoed behind it in other language, clipped and cold. Whoever was on the other side wasn't military. They weren't official. They were ghosts, just like Layla, but unbound by flag or code, just paid hands. Layla pressed the final thermal charge against the bulkhead and set the 30-second timer. Rain crouched beside the emergency tunnel shaft, hands working a manual crank to open the passage. His knuckles were white with cold and fear. Dagger tossed Layla a final glance. 15 minutes to the forest line. We've got one drone waiting northwest. Old contract asset. She nodded, pulling the patch from her sleeve, the one the pilot saw days ago. The one that had started all this. Make sure they see this, she said, handed it to him. It's time people stop pretending we never existed. Dagger paused. You're coming behind us. I will. Once this place is ash. She shoved the rifle strap higher on her shoulder and loaded her last mag. Go. Dagger and Ren vanished into the escape shaft just as the door behind her blew inward. Layla spun, hit the deck, and fired. The first man-through dropped instantly. She moved fast, darting between old servers and power columns. Every shot counted, 2 in the chest, 1 in the leg. She forced them to slow, to scatter. Her mind moved faster than her body, reading angles and choke points. Not from instinct, this was training. Ghost protocol conditioning. The second thermal exploded in the west corridor. A fireball ripped through the wall, sending concrete into the air like shrapnel. Layla ducked as debris slammed overhead. Blood ran from her forehead, but her grip stayed tight. She could barely hear now, just heartbeats and pulse. Then she moved, not out of fear, not to escape. She moved to draw them away from the shaft. Every bullet she fired was one less they could use on Ren. Every step she took deeper into the compound was a step they'd follow blindly. The third thermal went off. The hallway lit up in blue flame. Lights burst. The ceiling sagged. Layla stumbled into the comms room, coughing blood, lungs blackening from smoke. She was nearly out of time. She opened her vest and pulled out the hardened drive. There was one final terminal still active, an emergency uplink to the Arctic communications satellite, meant for last resort alerts. She slammed the drive into it and typed her clearance. The system blinked red, then green. Upload sequence initiated. She entered one more code. Protocol 47 Firebrand. A covert sequence written years ago for whistleblower emergencies. Not used in over a decade, but her access still worked. Ghost leader override. The files began uploading names, bank routes, buried operations, photos, conversations, backroom agreements, everything they'd buried, everything they denied. Truth in motion. A voice crackled behind her. You should have stayed dead. Layla turned. The final operative stepped into view, face covered, silencer raised. He fired. Her left arm snapped back with the impact, blood blooming instantly. She dropped to one knee. But she didn't stop typing. The upload hit 94%. She turned her weapon sideways and fired blind 3 rounds. One struck true. He dropped with a grunt, hitting the floor just as the upload reached 100%. Transmission complete. Layla slumped forward. The terminal died. The power surged. Somewhere above, the remaining charges went off. A roar of fire swallowed the bunker. 2 days later, news networks lit up across the globe. Encrypted documents leaked from a verified satellite relay showed a shadow economy inside NATO's intelligence framework. Retired operatives selling black project data. Rogue generals rerouting weapons under classified training exercises. Billions in crypto tied to unmarked accounts. A Senate hearing opened in D.C. before the sun even rose, and in a silent office within Langley, a senior analyst stared at one image on a recovered drive, a photo of a coffee cup on a steel table. Beside it, a single patch rested, the ghost insignia, the one that shouldn't exist, the one Layla Monroe wore. Far in the north, Alaska, Dagger stood by a fire pit deep in the forest. Rand sat across from him, ribs taped, face bruised. They were silent, watching the flames. Dagger finally said, "We burned the shadows, but it cost her everything." Ren nodded slowly. She knew what it would take. We all did. Then from the trees came the soft crunch of boots on snow. They turned. A figure limped forward, hair soaked, arm bandaged, blood crusted but alive. Layla Monroe. Dagger's face broke. You made it. She dropped beside the fire, coughing. Hard. Barely. No medals. No parade. Just three ghosts sharing heat and silence. Above them, the northern lights shimmered like silent witnesses for the first time in years. Layla didn't need a past to define her. The world knew. She was the reckoning, the end,